Hi, and welcome to a presentation on the International Standard Archival Description General, the ISAD-G. As the title would suggest, this standard is used in archives and archival arrangement, not only with one institution or country, but to be able to communicate with other countries as well. And this was done without regard to the format of the items being described, but to have a general standard to describe any kind of item. So just a few terms to get started. There's the arrangement. This is the intellectual and physical process and results of analyzing and organizing documents in accordance with archival principles. So not only intellectually these items are similar and therefore should live together, but also these items are of a similar format, such as tape, and therefore need to live together. The FONS series, file, and item has to do with that arrangement. FONS is the collection level. Series is going to be below that. That's the filing system. Then a file is a unit of documents. And then an item, finally, is the smallest item or unit. It's the intellectually indivisible unit. So for example, this individual assignment is an item. It's in the file INSC 590 metadata. It's in the series fall classes for 2018, and then in the FONS or collection of graduate work at SIS. So just real quick, a brief history of the ISAD-G. It was an ad hoc committee of the International Council of Archives. It started in 1994 as an ad hoc committee, but was then made permanent in 96. They had a first draft, and they stated that there should be revisions every 5 years. And to get feedback, they opened up that first draft to critiques and suggestions. 33 comments from 25 countries were given, and then those were condensed down to a 110-page document. And what is now used is the second edition that was submitted in 2000, and that's where the 26 elements come in. So some goals of the ISAD were to set a general rules for archival description as part of a process that would ensure the creation of consistent, appropriate, and self-explanatory descriptions, facilitate the retrieval and exchange of information about archival material, enable sharing of authority data, and make possible the integration of descriptions from different locations into a unified information system. Of course, there's rules for each element. There needs to be the name of the element, a statement of purpose, a general rule, and then also examples of how to use that element. They did want this to be a multi-level description, so 4 rules with that. You want to go from the general to the specific, so start with that FONS level, work your way down to the item level. Information needs to be relevant to that level of description. The linking of descriptions needs to show where in the hierarchy this description is listed, and then non-repetition of information. This does not mean that the terms are not repeatable. They are, of course, just like in Dublin Core, but it means that if you have described it at the FONS level, then don't describe it again at the item level. So these elements were broken into 7 different areas. Here they're listed. I'm going to go through each one a bit more in depth on subsequent slides, but here's all 7 laid out for you. So the first one is identity statement area, and this is any information conveyed to identify the unit of description. So the reference code is the unique identifier. It's going to have the country code, the repository code, and any specific local reference code. All 3 of those need to be there if you're going to have exchange of information at an international level. The title is the title, dates, pretty self-explanatory. Level of description, again, is going to go to that FONS, series, file, or item. And the extent and medium of the unit of description. So cubic feet is a standard measurement in archives. So here's where you would list how many cubic feet the collection takes, but also any information about the medium that the item is. So for example, it consists of 5 folders of paper materials as well as 2 VHS tapes. The context area is going to be information conveyed about the origin and custody of the unit of description. So this is the name of the creators. This is the original creators, not the institution that's archiving the material, but who created it to begin with. Of course, that can be an individual or an organization or a group of individuals. Administrative and biographical history. This is something that the archive does create to give context to the items. The archival history is to provide information on the history of unit of description that is significant for its authenticity, integrity, and interpretation. So this is where you get into rules of provenance, like who, where, to authenticate an item. And then immediate source of acquisition or transfer. This is information about when the materials came into the archive and is often when the accession number is given. Then content and structure area is information conveyed about the subject matter and the arrangement of the unit description. So scope and content, these are notes made by the archivist to give the user some so that they can judge the potential relevance of the unit of description. So it can give a summary, such as time periods, geography, and then also any kind of the subject matter, administrative process, that kind of thing. Appraisal, destruction, and scheduling information. Archives don't always keep what's been donated to them. So this is where that information goes. The appraisal process, and then if an item was chosen not to be put in the archive, how it was destroyed. Accruals is when the archive has decided to keep a collection, but the nature of the collection is that material will continue to be made, new material will be made. So this is where information on the schedule and process of how that new information will come in to the archive is listed. And then the system of arrangement is to provide information on the internal structure there at the archive. Then conditions of access and use area. This is information about the availability of the unit of description, so conditions governing access. This is the legal status, who's allowed to see it. Sometimes when things are donated, people say, I don't want anyone to see it until after my death. Conditions governing reproduction, this has to do with copyright rules. Language, scripts of material, what language are they in? Physical characteristics and technical requirements. So the actual, like, how am I going to be able to look at this item? So for example, back to those 2 VHS tapes, the fact that you're going to have a VCR in order to see those. And then finding aids, these are not the ones created by the archivist, but instead the ones that were created by the original creator of the item. So any kind of key that they may have made for their own filing system, for example. Then allied materials area, this is information about materials having an important relationship to the units of materials. So the existence and location of originals. Are these the original? Where are the originals? Existence and location of copies, the same thing but with copies. Related units of description, where the like see also or previous names, like where is this linked to other things in the archive. And then a publication note. This is to identify any publications that are about or based on the use, study, or analysis of the unit of description. So for example, the original handwritten notes that then became a book. Notes area. There's only one here because this is literally where you put things that don't nicely fit in any of the other categories. And description area, this is information of how, when, and by whom the archival description was prepared. So the archivist note is to explain the description. Rules or conventions are to identify the protocols, and then the dates are to indicate when this description was prepared and or revised. So having gone through 26 elements, it turns out that only these are the ones that are actually essential if you want to be able to have international exchange of descriptive information. It's just these listed here: the reference code, that unique identifier, title, creator, dates, extent of unit description, and level of description. So some challenges, future revisions. They did originally state that they wanted this revised every 5 years. Of course, the second edition is 18 years old, so it is not. That has not happened. And then a focus on the user. This is a debate within archives in general, but does the user need to know that this is an item level description versus a FONS level description, or simply that this is the material that they want? So yeah, so just ongoing debate there. And then some references. Thanks, y'all.